and welcome to episode 77 of the So Bet Punks podcast, the podcast about meaning, transcendence, awe, and spirituality with a small s. My name is Siobhan.
And I'm Dave, and I apologise if you can hear a gentle rumbling in the background currently. Somebody has just, I believe, started sucking poos out of an old people's home across the road from us.
It might not be quite so severe, but it's definitely some sort of sewage clearance going on.
There's poos involved, definitely. You don't get a pipe of that magnitude. And
it's post-Christmas. It's the post-Christmas old people's home dump. Quite literally. And it's being sucked out right now.
Those poor men. Can you imagine? They've had a week off.
Oh gosh.
We're recording this on January the 6th.
Epiphany.
What?
That's when the wise men got to Jesus and gave him all the frankincense, myrrh and gold.
Oh, there you go.
Took them a long time to get there, those wise men.
Well, I think this man is sucking some frankincense, myrrh and gold out of those old people's cisterns.
That's called sprout slop.
Oh.
So much Christmas dinner been pumped into them.
He's got to go round all day, setting his big pipe up, sucking poos out of different old people's homes. Well, I don't think this is how old people's homes work. I think they all just have sewage systems.
Yeah. Well, he's. I think there's a sewage block, and that's what he's clearing, and no wonder. But
Happy New Year!
Happy New Year! Well, speaking of happy, I've met a sewage man who was coming to clear out the pipes of one of our friends' house once.
I don't think he'd appreciate being called a sewage man.
What's his job?
I don't know, but
clearer.
I'm certain it's not that. Apologies to any sewage man out there.
And it was like one of the hottest days of the year of that year. It was a baking hot day, not the day you'd think anyone would want to be clearing pipes. He was one of the jolliest men I'd ever met. And I said, gosh, what a day to be doing all that. He's like, he was just so happy.
Did he have his top off?
Nope.
It's not an important question, but I was just thinking in the summer, you could imagine it's quite a nice job outside.
I would say he actually had quite a lot of clothes on. He had probably just in case you're going to get covered in shit, you cover yourself up, I guess.
Oh, what a nice conversation to start the podcast.
He was very jolly, and I thought, what a nice man.
If there was ever two people talking about spirituality or transcendence, it's us talking about a man sucking poos out of an old people's home whilst you recount an old story of meeting a man doing the same, being
and
happy.
Very happy.
Yeah, I suppose there is a degree of transcendence there. I also have small beef at the moment, I think. Well, I don't mean to. This phrase that we've keep saying, spirituality with a small s.
Yeah.
I've never heard anyone use it before. I genuinely truthfully believed I'd made it up. I mean, I'm not saying it's amazing or anything. I just thought it was quite a good way of describing what we were trying to do.
Yeah.
And I was listening to a podcast at some point, it's a little while ago now, I can't even remember which one it was, and somebody used the phrase spirituality with a small s, and I thought, oh shit, is this something that other people do? Anyway, he was using it to describe, and I believe this is a quote, but again, I can't even remember who said it, so I'm sure it's not accurate. Something along the lines of, crystals and things.
Oh.
Just to be clear, I mean, fuck me, if you've been listening to this podcast expecting us to talk about crystals and things, and I assume auras and Shakti mats, we did do a bit of that.
Yeah, chakras in alignment.
That's definitely not what we mean by spirituality with a small s.
Speak for yourself. That could be
maybe we should change it to religion with a small r. That doesn't work as well.
No, I like spirituality small. I've heard spirituality with a small s before as well. I've read it in a book. Other people describe it in that respect. So I don't mean to burst your bubble, but I think a few people describe it that way. But
I also thought I was a genius when I came up with the SoBet podcast because I didn't think anyone would have a clue what that was. It turns out,
very popular word. It's just
in
a
Arabic.
Very standard word. A conversation.
Yeah.
There you go. Oh well, you're not a genius, but
this
you
is
are.
The problem with
in a way.
not having your finger on the pulse. You see.
Yeah.
If you ignore everything that's going on around you, then when you come up with a great idea, but it's already been done, you've got no way of checking.
Yeah, unless it's in Fistful of Metal, you're not really going to know whether you made it up or not.
We haven't got any Manowar updates for you this episode.
No.
I hope you had a nice Christmas, by the way. We've been away for a little while.
Yeah, what's it been? Probably a month since we've last done an episode.
It's been about a month, and Christmas was good, I think.
Yeah, I had a nice Christmas. I think you did. I mean, it was quite long because I think we spread out all of our family gatherings. So it ended up feeling like a bit of an extended festive period. Weirdly not festive at the beginning. Weirdly not that festive at the end. But our days of festivities were fun, but they were
Yes.
spent at home just being festive.
Yeah. I mean,
Nice, though.
I've been working in retail throughout the Christmas period, so
Mm.
that was fine, really. But it definitely is not as pleasant.
You didn't look as upset as last year, and whether that's
No.
less it's upsetting people coming in, or whether you're just managing it better.
Oh, I'd like to think it was the latter, but I've no idea.
Who knows? I mean, I couldn't tell you, but you definitely seemed like it was all much more pleasant this year.
Oh, that's nice to hear.
Yeah.
A little bit like that man who was sucking shit out of a hot old
A hot
people's
sewage
homes
pipe.
sewage. I hope I was
Aw.
as happy as he.
No one could be, because I genuinely
Not
I
possible
genuinely
to
was
be
shocked.
happier than that man.
He was one of the happiest people I'd ever met.
Oh, that's nice.
He was it was pure joy at what he was doing. I think it was just like, oh well, that's fine. You know,
Well, you know
that doesn't
what?
sound like happiness, but it was.
I was going to move on, but let's not. I mean, it's quite interesting, isn't it? Because I think there's probably a degree of gallows humour involved. When you do, I mean, we've both... Well, you are a psychiatric nurse. I was a psychiatric nurse for a long time. We did a lot of things in that job that a lot of people would consider very unpleasant, on many different levels.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And I think there is I don't know. I'm sure it will just probably ruin some people to do a job like that, but maybe it does make. I don't know if you can just sort of laugh a lot. If something like that normalises to
Yeah.
you, maybe that's quite a healthy thing.
I
don't
watched.
know.
I watched someone. There is something about it because I think you have to do it, and I think the more ridiculous the job, the more you have to kind of do that. And I've seen the closest bonded teams I've ever worked with are on the wards that are just shocking. Like
Yeah.
the stuff you have to deal with every day is just so ridiculous. I mean, yesterday I watched a very, very good, very, very skilled charge nurse waving a Kit Kat and a bag of Haribo at a patient to kind of sheepdog them out of a room, and I just was looking at myself like, what are we doing to try and get them back into seclusion without having to restrain them? She was just kind of like waving a Kit Kat. It worked, which is just the truthful horrible stupidness
Not
of
the most
thing.
professional thing to have done, though.
We didn't have to restrain him.
No, true.
But it was one of those like, what is going on? I laughed afterwards. I was like, what the fuck were you doing? You looked like you were directing an air traffic, but instead of having the things in your hand, you had Haribo in one, Kit Kat in another, and the promise of a bottle of Pepsi Max at this poor
Healthy
man.
living, holistic care.
All of this is better than
Yeah.
trying to restrain someone who
Agreed.
is twice your size.
Agreed.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
it's a bit
interesting.
ridiculous.
I suppose that's the thing. You end up laughing at some of the... I mean, there's definitely things that have happened in my work that I haven't ended up laughing at, but I will say a lot of the things involving poo or mess, generally, it's definitely the sort of thing that you find amusing. I'll never forget somebody pooing into his own hand and throwing it at me and 3 other people. You know who this was, I think.
Yeah, he's so nice.
And anyway, we can't go into specifics, but it was, very unpleasant. But the 3 of us were just cracking up, and he was cracking up too. And it was quite a nice moment in a funny sort of way because it was very unusual. It was just a load of people laughing whilst one of them pooed in his own hand and threw it.
Well,
at the
actually,
others.
I bonded with. There was one of our patients, again, who we nursed together, who I found really like awful, and I know you did too. And that's a horrible thing to say, probably, but she really truly was quite nasty at times. And
we are quite professional in our work.
True.
It
Well,
doesn't
I'm not about
it
to.
It doesn't sound
it.
like it.
And this poor woman had been constipated for maybe 3 months. And I was on a night shift. It's about 4 a.m, and I'm like, I'm just doing the rounds. Everyone's on their breaks. I walked into a corridor, and the smell of this corridor, and I was like, no. And basically, for those who don't know, we do hourly checks. So you have to check on everyone once an hour. And I, being unprofessional, was just like, do I have to look in that room? Because if I look in that room, I am going to have to deal with whatever's
There's
happening
poo
in
in
there.
there.
And I can smell that something has happened. And I was about to walk away, and I was like, no, Siobhan, you can't do that. You do have to legally check everyone is alive once an hour. Got to the room. This poor woman who hates me, and I don't particularly feel that fond about her, I've never seen it, because it's 3 months worth of stuff, and she's been pumped for laxatives for about 3 days.
If, ladies and gentlemen listening, you don't realise what that means, poo in a bag for the next 3 months and then see how big that bag is at the end of it.
And also then water it down a bit and throw it up the walls.
Absolutely, yeah.
This poor woman, it was absolutely everywhere. The floor, the bed, up the walls, in her hair, everywhere. And it is a very quick lesson in how to very quickly become compassionate for someone, because as much as I didn't want to have to deal with all that, she was laying in it and she was like, oh my God, help me. Then led to the trying to stand up in it. She's in a Zimmer she needs a Zimmer frame to walk, so getting her out of the bed was a nightmare. No, it was awful. She's got a catheter bag in, so that's clearly compromised. This woman also don't like washing herself, so I was like, you're going to have to do that because I've got a room full of everything to deal with. But we laughed, we were skidding around in it. I just thought, what is going on? But by the end, we were friends, so that was nice. It started happening again, and I was like tag teaming out. Another nurse is dealing with this, but poo stories, we've got tons. If you want more, shamcityroasters@gmail.com. I've literally got at least 10 I can recall like that.
Yeah, we can't. This podcast can't
and it
just
cannot be a poo
I'm
episode.
I'm sure that most people listening would enjoy it more than whatever nonsense we're about to talk about, but we're not going to do that.
If you want a special poo episode, let us know. shamcityroasters@gmail.com. Again, we could do a series on the poos, but let's not do a series on the poos. We've started with poos, let's not finish with poos.
No, but I do think we brought it around, and that does sort of sound like a mixture of transcendence or spirituality with a small s.
I mean, yeah. Do you know what? I had meaning in my job that day because I was actually nursing someone, so that was nice.
Yeah.
And you were kind of nursing someone dodging poo.
I was literally nursing him. I was extraordinarily compassionate to him afterwards.
True.
But considering he'd been throwing shit at my face.
I've got wonderful poo stories about that man. Now
Anyhow, we're going to move on. So, this is the SoBet Punks podcast. Thank
the
you so much.
SoBet Poo Poo podcast.
We would like to wish you all a happy new year.
Yeah.
It is 2025,
It is.
which, as I think I said, is officially the future. I suppose every second from this point forth is the future, and as I'm saying it, I'm creating the future. And
That's true.
You are also creating the future by making what we're saying up in your own ears.
Weirdly, you're hearing this and it's happening in the future, but we've recorded it in the past. Are you time traveling?
Yes.
Oh, fantastic.
I did a very quick Google search in preparation. My entire preparation for this whole episode is that I Google searched the following.
Fantastic.
2025 is the year of the...
Ooh.
And it's fucking Snake. Yeah. Isn't it?
Wait a minute, is that me? I think I'm Snake.
You're a snake.
No, I think I am.
Right.
The Chinese zodiacs.
I don't know, yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm the snake.
Oh, good
Because
stuff.
dragon before. Was last year a dragon then? Yeah, I think so. I think I'm the snake. Oh, it's my year. Fantastic.
Great. Siobhan's year, everybody. So we're going to start off with what we always start off with, which is to tell you one thing that we've done over normally the past 2 weeks, but on this occasion it's going to be, I don't know how long it's been, about a month.
It has been about
of what we have done to create a sense of transcendence or meaning or spirituality with a small s. And Siobhan, I would like you to go first, please.
Oh, isn't that convenient? I feel like I'm always struggling at this point, and that is one of my goals for this year, is to kind of like deal with this in a very practical manner. I want to actually do things actively that bring me meaning, transcendence and all. But that being said, I have had a lucky couple of weeks. One thing was an accident. I was driving home, looked in the sky, it was incredibly clear, and I think tons of other people will know this. But there was two things that happened on the same day. A meteor shower.
Shower?
Shower. Yeah, I'm going shower.
Mm-hmm.
Shower that I think I caught a bit of because I thought I saw
I think there was a few meteor showers in the old people's home, and that's why he sucked them out of the tube.
Oh, he seems to be doing well. So I think I saw...
Oh, yeah, sorry, update on the man. He's still there, but he's turned his noise off.
Oh, maybe he's got enough poos. That is a full lorry.
He's got enough poos.
That's my quota. I can go back. Come back tomorrow and I'm done for the week. I saw a shooting star, which I think now might have been the beginning of a meteor shower. And the moon was like in this lovely crescent shape, and there was this really bright thing next to it that I just thought, that can't be a star. Like, that's far too bright. That's probably... But then I didn't think it was anything interesting. I was just like, I wonder what that is. It's probably a helicopter. But it was beautiful, so I looked at it for ages. The sky was just gorgeous, and it turns out there was Venus, and I don't think I'd ever seen a planet before in the sky. And turns out this month, if anyone's interested in that sort of stuff, there's loads of lovely sky happenings. Ooh. I know that Jupiter and Venus are going to be seen very close together in the sky next to the moon by the end of the month. Loads of meteor stuff, loads of lovely sky things, and it was just one of them. I think it's a classic way to feel awe is to look at the sky on a very clear night. But to just have been happened upon just made me feel really like... some of my best seeings of the skies are on my drive home, because you're driving home, you just finished work and you could do with clearing your brain out, and it's just a very big jump.
Like that man's clearing the poos out.
Clear the poo of your brain. And I just was very quickly, you snap out of any kind of, I don't know, waffle in your brain that's going on from work. I mean, my drive home is very good for that, because very quickly you can forget about work. It's literally a transition period, and by the time you're at home, even if you've had the worst day, you probably can't remember it that well. But just to be jump started.
That's called Alzheimer's, but yeah.
You cannot talk. You've only got a 5-minute walk, and I bet you don't remember your day home when you get home.
Keep talking about yourself,
Oh,
Siobhan.
shush. But yeah, so just to have that kind of jump start out of myself, and to see, I don't know, the sky was just gorgeous that night. And it reminded me that I was gifted a beautiful telescope that I have not used for 2 years. And I need to...
failure of a birthday, that was.
It wasn't a failure. It's my failings, because I'm too stupid to know how to make it work. And it's much better than I could operate. So I'm gonna dedicate, after seeing that lovely moon and that lovely planet, because that was just clear view. That sort of stuff's up there all the time. Don't know if you know.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And yeah, I want to get looking at it, because that's a very quick way to feel incredibly small in what I find to be the most lovely way. Like, just ridiculous. Looking up there and being like, that is a fucking planet. That is some other planet. And that is technically, with what we know about the galaxy and the universe, that planet is incredibly close to us. And yet it is, you can't fathom where that is. It's just not possible to understand. So I love that. So yeah, no, I'm going to go with that. I looked at the sky and it was lovely.
I think I'm more of a daytime sky man than a nighttime sky man.
Oh, really? You're the day man. I'm the night man.
Indeed. Because I don't know. I think, well, it depends. But I like a nice clear blue sky with clouds are the things that I think catch my imagination, possibly more than stars.
Really?
I love being out on the occasions. It's very rare that I've ever done it. I mean, growing up in Greater London, this was very rare, and I didn't often go out into the countryside. But on the occasions where I found myself out in the middle of nowhere and you can look up and you can see more stars than you normally see,
100%.
I like that a lot. But I think, I think it's the day sky.
Really? That's
that
interesting.
really creates a sense of kind of, oh, look how small I am and look how amazing God's creation is.
But that's crazy, because those clouds are actually ridiculously close. Like, you can, when you're in a plane, you're above them.
Yeah.
So it's... No, but it's lovely to have that. I mean, you can find all that in anything. But yeah, no, that's one thing I do miss from even just living on a well-lit street in a flat. You can't really get a clear sky, but we're not that far from places where we could, and I just need to start making trips out at, like, I don't know. I mean, I'm not up very late at night, so I need to figure out how best to do this, but I definitely want to go and experience some more clear skies at night, because it is a bit incredible to see. And yeah, there's people who, I mean, yeah, living in London, you almost never get to see it. And then there's people who probably live in the countryside and see it all the time. And maybe it's quite normal for them. But I do find that it's not normal enough for me, because every time I see it, it's amazing. But it is achievable.
In a way, that's the best place to be, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I just want to go and find it more.
If it was normal to you and you looked at it and you just saw it as a completely run-of-the-mill sky, then it would have none of the effect, whereas actually being away from it, or not being able to see it most of the time and then catching it every now and again is probably how it's going to have the most effect on you.
That's true.
Like everything else. Once it normalises, it no longer...
It's not that exciting. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, fair enough. But I do need to use that telescope, so I am going to make some trips out to see. But
is that one of your New Year's resolutions?
It actually isn't even on the list. I've got a few that I probably need to add, but we'll get to them later. David, how about you? What have you done in the last 2 to 4 weeks that has brought you meaning, transcendence, awe, and spirituality with a little S?
Well, as you said that, the man turned back on his pipe.
Poo
so
pipe.
I don't think he is full.
The poo pipe is piping. The poo pipe is piping.
So again, just a quick update for everybody listening at home, in case you can't hear the loud noise that you can probably all listen to. So I had a bit of a hard time with this one, actually. I don't think I've concentrated. I think, Christmas was busy. Work was particularly busy, and trying to maintain. I had assignments at uni to do and all sorts of different things. So I kind of feel like I've been just generally busy.
Yeah.
So I haven't really had a chance to think about this very much. But it's a bit of a weird one, really. I think mine is actually the absence of something. It's totally different, but it's kind of similar to what we were literally just talking about, which is that, so I've been running quite a lot recently, and generally also just kind of living and doing things. And I'd say that because this has affected both. I managed to fuck my knee up ages ago, and it was kind of a long-term injury. And then, but I've got a little brace for it and just been running on it. And then whilst I was doing that, just before Christmas, I fucked the other knee up as well. And then about, I think maybe a few days before that, actually, or at some point within very close range to that, I seem to have got a trapped nerve in my shoulder. So I have one limb that works with any sort of consistency.
Works.
Well, yeah, and that's questionable. The knee was extraordinarily painful, but kind of passed, but still it's stopping me from being able to run. So I haven't been able to run for about 3 weeks or something. And the trapped nerve in the shoulder has just been fucking agony, and has just, that's why I bring up just generally being alive, is that both being able to walk and using it's my right arm, and I'm right-handed. So, well, sort of. Mostly I'm right-handed.
That sounds far more dodgy than I think you mean it to.
Oh, okay. Well, let's leave it at that then.
Oh, fair.
But it's just made me really appreciate, it sounds so stupid, but it's made me really appreciate having those things normally. So it's made me really appreciate running. And I was appreciating it a great deal, and I've really, really, really got into it. And I've been sort of running on and off for probably about 10 years now in reality, but with very little dedication. Until probably lockdown, and then lockdown, I definitely upped it a little bit. But even then, it wasn't going so well. And then we talked, I think we probably touched on this a little bit, but on the last episode, we talked a little bit about sort of changing our nutrition and stuff. And I found, I don't know whether it's a bit of a placebo or whether it's a genuine thing, but once I started to kind of take better care of my body, that I could just run further and further and further. And I've got to a point where I don't think I'm good at it, but I feel, for me, in comparison to any other time in my life, and keeping in mind I'm entering middle age.
During how long do you think you're going to live?
The official, it did sound like one.
Yeah.
No, the official version of middle age. I think that's. Of course, I'm not living for another that amount again.
You're not doing this again.
But it's been a bit weird because I'm probably fitter than I've ever been, and this all sounds big-headed. It's not at all. It was just that I was an extraordinarily non-fit child and teenager, and in my 20s, I basically spent the entire time doing no exercises, eating like shit, and then even my 30s, I was probably at my least healthy.
Yeah,
in a lot of ways, but for different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Anyhow, the point is that I've really got into it and I really love it, and I kind of like feeling fit, I suppose, relatively speaking. Again, I'm certainly not a fitness man, but I'm much fitter than I've ever been. And having all of these injuries has made me really appreciate all that time that I didn't have them for.
Yeah. And
really look forward to getting back to it. So yeah, it's a bit of a weird one, but I think it's good in a way. It's good in a way to go without. Well, you've got to go without to go with.
Yeah.
We said this. This is one of Dave's
Cohen's.
Cohen's. And I think normally I would say that you need to have gone without prior to going with, if you see what I mean. But this is quite an interesting way of having had the thing that I want.
Yeah.
And then to not have it for a little while just makes you appreciate it more. And I hope that when I start again, and I'm hoping to start quite soon, I think my knees are a bit better. Yeah. I might even go try for a little run tomorrow, but you told me off about that, so we'll see. But, I hope that it will. I know that if nothing else, that first run, and to bring it back round to your thing, one of the reasons why I like the daytime sky, I think, is because I often go out running quite early when the sun's just come up, and by the sea as well, and it's fucking beautiful. Aww. So hopefully I'm going to have that experience tomorrow. What might happen is I might get halfway down the road, both of my knees might fuck up, and I might just lay
Call
there.
an ambulance.
Might just lay there and say, help.
Help me.
And so I'll hear someone
No.
say, oh no, that middle-aged man across the road is having trouble. Maybe he's had a fall. I hope he hasn't pissed himself.
Please don't piss yourself. No, I can definitely see that. I think that's probably quite a stoic thing. It's a way to train yourself to appreciate things anyway, to imagine as if you can't do something anymore, and so wouldn't you really like to do this basic thing? It's something to think when you're doing something that seems quite tedious. If you were to think, oh, what if tomorrow I could never do this again? You'd be like, would you find it so tedious if you knew it was the last time you were ever going to do it?
Or if doing
you were
it
never gonna be able
causes
to do
you
it.
discomfort. So
Yeah.
we talked last episode, I think, about how important washing up has become to my life.
Oh, yes.
Maybe overplayed it a little bit, but I will say this.
I mean, be the person who accidentally does it sometimes and gets moaned at.
But
I know how much it
having a
means to
trapped
you.
nerve in your shoulder makes washing up quite uncomfortable. So when you're trying to do your little mindful practice every morning of doing the washing up at exactly the same time and in exactly the same way, in that way that is definitely fine and really good for you, it changes even things like that, even to funny little things. It's just you suddenly I could. There was a period of time where I couldn't sit down and not be in pain. So it kind of affected everything. There was nothing I could do that wasn't being ruined by it.
But now, I mean, you appreciated it before, but then now, once you get it all back, it'll be a newfound appreciation. I had a similar thing when I dislocated my shoulder. Prior to that, I was probably the healthiest I'd been and was feeling quite fit and strong. It was definitely the strongest I've been. And then I couldn't do anything after that at all. And then going back to weightlifting, I couldn't hold the barbell in any position, and I just thought, this is never coming back. And now looking back, it came back relatively quickly. But I remember doing the first barbell clean lift after dislocating my shoulder, which was my strongest lift, and doing it just with the barbell and just being so happy. Happier than when I'd lifted very heavy before, because it was that thing that you just think, actually I didn't know that if I was even ever going to be able to do this again. So all of a sudden you appreciate it. And one thing I've tried to mindfully do is to continue being appreciative of this, because I still don't have my strength back, but every time I'm not hitting what I wish I was, I'm like, you know what, it doesn't matter, because at least you still get to do this. There was a time when you couldn't even pick the thing up, so it's still really lucky that I'm even doing it. So.
Well, it's worth changing what you're aiming for, though, as well,
Yeah.
isn't it? And that's hard to do, but I think you can do it consciously. It's like maybe once upon a time, I'm going to have to accept this as we all are as we get older, for example. So you enjoy doing these sorts of things, but fundamentally, I mean, I'm only going to get worse at doing physical things from this point onwards, probably in my life.
Well, weirdly, running, you're at your best to do
I'm
it
right this
between
second
40 and
I
50.
am.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Yeah, but that's going to go over the hill as well at some point,
Yeah,
isn't
but
it?
not for a little while.
No, but I just mean that. You have to be willing to. Another example, when I was so my uni course, the first 2 years that I did were at a level 1, and the second 2 years are at a level 2, and so I was writing all of my assignments, I was getting my scores back, and I was getting a certain level of scores for the most part, and they were slowly but surely getting better, and I was like, fuck me, I'm quite good at this is brilliant. Then I start the level 2, which I've only just really started, and I've done a couple of essays for that, and they're considerably. Well, not considerably, but they're a fair amount less than what I was at level 1. Now, of course, that makes perfect sense because it's harder and they expect more from you and all that sort of stuff. But to begin with, you just look at the number and you just think, oh, I've gone down 10 points. Oh, I must have got much worse at this. But actually, in reality, what you need to do is you need to look at where you're at, look at a sensible goal, and then maybe push it a tiny amount, and then trick yourself in a way, I suppose, or at least, fiddle with your consciousness so that you can be happy just to get that goal.
And also, it's about what that goal actually is. Is it just that measurement? Because
it's all nonsense, isn't it? You just made it up.
It is. And annoyingly, the number in your grades is the thing that translates into a score at the end. And it's the same with weightlifting. The number is if you were going for numbers against someone or whatever, or if you wanted to increase your weight, the number is the thing that's important. But there's also how you know, how did it feel doing it? So in your writing, like your feedback is still really, really good. And did you enjoy it? Did you find it easy? Did you find it worthwhile?
Yeah,
is your
of course.
style of writing getting better with the lifting? It's like, well, actually, you might have hit the same number or less, but did it feel comfier? Could you do it again? Did it look much neater technique wise? There's just other things that when we get hung up on a particular measurement or a particular goal, it's about kind of thinking about it in a bigger way.
Yeah, of course.
And thinking of all the other ways in which that thing is useful. And then also, you know, how lucky we are to even be in those positions to do these things.
But this is why competing is such bullshit.
Yeah.
You know, competing is not, I don't think, good for, unless you want to, and I mean, even then, I don't think it's particularly good for your mental health. But I mean, if you're a 20-year-old who's trying to get in the Olympics, then yeah, okay, competition is going to make you better. But if you're just doing something for your own worth, then competing, even if you're competing with yourself, is just bullshit. You need to be happy with just doing the thing and enjoying it. Yeah. And that's the important thing. And whilst numbers are good to push you forward, they can't be the do-all or end-all.
Exactly.
You know, that can't. You can't be like, oh, I didn't make that number that I wanted, so therefore I'm a failure.
Yeah, and everything wasn't worth it.
That's bullshit. That's You're just competing with this made-up concept.
Exactly. No, I agree.
And I think that the world would be a better place if we got rid of that whole idea of being better than other people. And I'm sure it infects everything. I'm sure it infects people's workplaces. You want to, some people, I certainly don't, but you know, some people want to be more senior than other people, or they want to be better at the job than other people, or they want to get more praise or whatever. You know, I'm sure it probably happens with bands. You want to be better or bigger or have a bigger audience or sell more or something or whatever.
Yeah.
It's all just bullshit. It's just shit that you've made up for no reason, and it's going to do is inhibit you from just enjoying the thing that you're doing, which is amazing.
Well, I guess another way that people probably experience this is Instagram stuff, like amount of likes and amount of shares and all that, because that's coming into lots of different people's worlds at the minute, and a lot of people's self-worth gets wrapped up in, oh no, you know, it's only been liked or shared this many times, or I only have this many followers. And that's, you don't even know that you're knowingly competing.
No, of course not. Well, competition, I think, has seeped its way into almost everything, and we wouldn't, in ways that you wouldn't necessarily. Like, I don't think most people would consider if it's something that you've decided you want, that they wouldn't see that as competition, because it's like, well, I'm not competing with myself, but you sort of are, because it's that weird mindset thing. What's going on inside your head is it doesn't matter who you're competing against, you're still competing.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, no, I see that. Boo to competitions, perhaps.
As Less Than Jake once said, I believe on their first 7-inch, which I own and might be worth some money, I don't know, it probably isn't. I won't compete again. Oh, he said that a lot. Can't remember the name of the song. Probably I won't compete again, I imagine. Right, before we move on to the main bit, how's he getting on with his poo sucking?
Oh, I don't know. Let me have a look. Is he finished or these lights are on? But I can't
Not
hear.
Robert Palmer.
But the poo pipe has gone.
Oh, really okay. That's definitely what you meant to be singing about. All right, well, let's move on to that's the update on the poo pipe man.
The poo pipe man.
So let's move on to the main segment of today, which I think we discussed a little bit at the end of the last episode, because we were talking about change, and we said that we would talk about New Year's resolutions. We've prepared nothing. Let's see how it goes.
Yeah, it should be fine. Maybe one of our New Year's resolutions should be to prepare more regularly.
I enjoy doing this without preparation
on
much
the
more
fly.
than when we used to prepare for fucking days.
I know. Do you remember those days? My gosh.
I do.
My gosh. But yeah, no, it's much better.
So, New Year's resolutions. Where are we at? When we very first got together, which at this point is, 11 years ago?
Something like that, yeah, about that.
I was someone who really didn't like New Year's resolutions. I would say, I don't know why, really. I just had an attitude to them, I think. I think I didn't like change. I was a very different person back then, I suppose.
I think also it's that cynicism that comes with New Year's resolutions, like, why wait so long to make a change, and you're going to start the year like this, but I get, because you're quite cynical.
I know. I was about to
say.
Sorry, you don't have to tell me that. Yeah. I was about to say. I don't think it was. I think you've given it too much thought, or given me the benefit of the doubt for having too much thought. I think I was just cynical about things.
Yeah.
So anything that other people did, I was cynical about. I think probably.
Yeah.
So anyway, so when I met you, you used to, I don't know whether you were lying or not, you told me that you did this thing where you'd make a list. This is how I remember it. Tell me if I'm wrong. I remember you telling me that you made a list that was more like aims for the year as opposed to resolutions, and that I should do the same. And I did, and found it quite useful, I think. Now, there's a very small difference between making aims for the year and making New Year's resolutions. But I think one's more useful than the other. Am I right in saying that's what you always used to do?
Yeah, I used to do a kind of... I think I do it better now, and I don't think I really knew what I was doing then. But I think I only did it differently with that kind of cynicism in the background as well. Like, it wasn't going to be, oh, I'm going to be fitter or I'm going to go to the gym. It was more like... by the end of the year, I'd like to have done this. Like, it wasn't really putting an aim on it. It wasn't putting a particular, like, measurement on it.
I'd say that's exactly what it was doing. It was putting an aim on it, definitely.
Yeah, but it wasn't putting it wasn't about change. It was about having an aim. So I think New Year's resolutions are usually like, I'm going to be a different person. And I think what I didn't like about New Year's resolutions was, I'm not going to just say I'm going to be different. I'm just going to have an aim that I'd like to achieve, and whether that changes me along the way, I don't know. But it felt smaller but more pointed to just make a generic aim and not put a time limit on it, which, for better or worse, I mean, other than at the end of the year, but no like specific, by this time I'll have done this. And I also wanted this list to be quite fluid, because sometimes at the beginning of the year I can't really think of much, but I have a few things. And the idea of this list was it was actually quite malleable. Like, I'd add to it, I'd cross things off, I'd add to it, cross things off. And then by the end of the year, the idea is that you've got the first few things for the next year. So it was kind of trying not to tie it in with the beginning of the year, but at the beginning of the year, you'd kind of review it and figure it out.
If I remember rightly,
which doesn't sound much different to resolutions, but I thought it was a tiny bit.
If I remember rightly as well, some of them were quite simple. I'm not sure if this is just how I started doing it, but there was some, because I think it's a more of a positive way of doing it, because you can cross things off once you've done them.
Yeah.
Maybe this is just how my mind works. But so as a result of that, you could do things that were relatively easy to do, or even not easy to do, but just things that you could get done.
Yeah.
Maybe. And so then it gives you momentum.
Yeah.
To keep going and feel like you're achieving things.
Well, that I definitely got from Mel, who I was living with at the time, and we've discussed our resolutions for this year fairly recently, or goals, or whatever you want to call it. And she was the person who 100% started the list, and she would even like kind of knowingly scatter them throughout so that you had lines crossed off throughout. Yeah. But she's just like, oh, I definitely put on things that I've kind of already done, but if I did it this year, I count it. And it is exactly that. It's that momentum, and it's that kind of the pleasure and the achievement of crossing something off. And yeah, just making sure that it wasn't just full of big goals that, let's get real, unless you're going to put a lot of commitment into it. Some of them, that's the reason that things fail quite quickly, is we decide these massive changes and neglect the tiny little things. And so if at the end of the year you've got all these massive things you didn't cross off, you kind of feel a bit ugh about it. Whereas if you've got a bit of a mixture of things in there that's quite realistic, then you don't feel so... the momentum's there, like you say. I think you worded it well.
And then I suppose also it opens the door on making them sort of fundamentally smart goals, which maybe we'll get to in a bit. Let's not talk about smart goals quite yet. But it gives you the opportunity to sort of plan. Again, I think this is what I liked about it, because the initial list that I made, if I remember rightly, had literally like 5 or 6 things on it. The one I've just made has, I don't know, probably about 40 things on
I've not even seen your list for this year, but, well, maybe we'll get into it, but lots of things.
But yeah, a lot of things, but I like that about it, because I could sort of say, okay, so, and some of them, a lot of them were very easy. They were not easy to achieve. I always set them so that they were they're definitely doable. So it would be something like, so my one that I've always had is read a certain number of books every year, and that number has gone up as time's gone on, which I think possibly proves that it worked, because I think at the time I thought to myself, I don't read enough, I want to read more. I don't know.
Yeah, I think things came along that changed all of our routines.
Oh yeah, of course.
And I think you've just kept it up since
then. No, of course. But I think it probably would have I think it would have had a positive effect anyway.
Yeah.
It certainly had a positive effect that first year, because I think I literally said something like read 10 books or something, and probably that was quite a lot for me, and so I probably got to number 8 in November and thought, fuck me, I better buckle down.
Yeah, that's true.
And so, you know, it did do...
It kick-started stuff.
Yeah. So I like that about it. I think I like that kind of making a goal that was definitely achievable, but that would push you a little bit.
And I think it's committing it to paper. I mean, I don't know how people write their lists, but we're still using paper and pen, and I think that's the best way.
Oh, you simply must. If anyone's written a New Year's resolution on their telephone, I fucking despair.
Yeah. Anyway, it's just terrible. You don't get that satisfaction of crossing that out at all. But
can you imagine? You just delete it? Oh God, awful. The world's awful. It's almost as bad as watching people on stage reading poetry off their phone or fucking lyrics to songs. If you're a singer and
you're really
getting hot about this now.
Wow.
I've gone from 0 to 100. If you're a singer in a band and you've ever got your fucking phone out on stage to remember the lyrics, just stop. Do something else. Anything.
So that was quite a few years ago that you're referencing starting these, or learning from me. Not really learning from me, when I said that I was making these lists.
You are the learning tree.
I am the learning tree. But I think you got me at a point where I was just kind of starting that. Like Mel, who I lived with at the time, was very good at creating these lists and kind of being very goal focused and orientated. And I was trying my best to do so. So I think you got me at a time when it was quite new for me, and I must say that I then you took to it and I kind of drifted away from it, and it's only quite recently that I've tried to get back into being a bit more goal and aim focused, and like I say, doing it in a way that's probably more, instead of deciding to change something, because I think that's one thing everyone just goes, I'm going to be a different person, it's going to be this way.
Well, if you think about what the classic New Year's resolutions are that fail, or like, you know, in a kind of in the ether that I think most people think of, it's definitely going to the gym. And there's that famous thing where everyone signs up to the gym on January the 1st and they only let you do it for 3 months because they know full well that at the end of the 3 months you're going to cancel. And I'm sure there must be millions of things like that.
Yeah.
People signing up to like self-help type stuff, or
I'd
be interested to know if like people go to churches and things like that after, I feel like it's that sort of big thing that people think to themselves, I want to make a big change in my life, so they go to the end point. That's where I'm kind of getting to. So the idea is that if you want to get a bit fitter, or you're not happy with how you look or something, then you don't just say, I'm going to go for a 10-minute run every other day. You say, I'm going to sign up to a gym. Like, that's a magic, the one.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it works for some people. Some people sign up to the gym, go, love it, and
get into it.
And they go to the gym a lot, and that's great. But the vast majority of people, that in of itself, or you say, I'm going to lose X amount of weight, or I'm going to get to this point. And actually, in reality, the goal is too much, so it's only going to put you off, I guess.
I think so. I think it's also like it's too drastic a change too quickly. Like, I guess something that maybe people struggle with, or, you know, in general, not just other people, but myself and just humankind generally, is once you've decided you want something, is about not getting it immediately. And so, you know, that's why diets are so popular, because people are like, yeah, I want to lose weight, and I can lose weight that quickly with that thing, but it's not maintainable, then it's not, you know, achievable long term. Whereas some of those kind of, I mean, it's funny because I said I don't want to write things that are like a drastic change, but actually doing the tiny little aims end up being the actual changes that stay 100%. Long term. So by default of not saying I want to change who I am, but making a smaller aim, you will then actually change who you are, and it's possible to do so. You just have to kind of be careful with your aims. And so you mentioned SMART goals at the beginning, which I love, and we learn about in mental health, but it turns out it's in business, it turns up in all sorts of places, it's probably all over fitness as well. And SMART is an acronym, which stands for, and I'm actually going to forget, but let's see if we can remember it. It's
been
specific,
a while for me as well. Yeah, specific,
measurable, achievable, realistic, and time orientated.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And while that might sound all like jargony gobbledygook, I think it's really, 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 really helpful, especially some of the bits more than others. So specific is about saying, instead of I want to get fitter, it's about saying what specifically you want to get better at doing. So like name the exercise, or name how long you want to run for, or something like that. Name the specific thing. Measurable, I mean, this is where it's a bit frustrating, but like, so for example, reading, you said I want to read this many books. So that's how many books is the measurement. Achievable, what did you say? You said you knew it was doable, your list,
yeah,
even though it's quite long.
I didn't say I'm going to read 200 books.
Yeah, exactly.
Or something.
Because that would be, impossible for most people. So you pick one that could be done. But I guess what you were gearing at is, at the beginning you did it so that it was definitely achievable, and now you do it so it's a bit of a challenge to force you to kind of keep...
Yeah, I think
on it.
I think achievable, but you don't. One of my problems with a lot of SMART goals that you do clinically, or that I've experienced people do clinically, is that achievable sometimes is almost like an insult. It's kind of like, you're going to brush your teeth every morning.
Yeah.
And I suppose that could be that for some people. Sorry, that's barely achievable.
Yeah.
So that is a real goal. But for a lot of people, it's like, it's not aiming for anything. So you want to aim for something that's maybe it's a bit like we talked about the flow state a lot. The flow state on a basic level is aiming for something that's just out of your ability, just out of your ability, so that you've got to really push yourself to get there, but that you can get to for sure. So you're not saying, so actually when I that first year when I said 10 books, I'm not even sure I did, but let's just pretend if we're using that one as an example. 10 books was easy. I mean, I think it should be easy for anybody to read 10 books in a year. I mean, that's very, it's probably, but it's not a lot. It's not a lot of time commitment. So I probably should have said like 20, because that would have been that, or something that would have been more. And so what I've done since then is always just added to the number in that context.
But for example, what you're doing now is achievable, but back then wouldn't have been realistic.
100%. Yeah.
So it's about, I think, the achievable and the realistic bits are so dependable on everything else. So realistic will be like, can you actually do it? Does your routine allow for that? Is your, what you do every day different? So I think those are the two things that not only do you have to be quite good with in the first place, but you have to also review them.
Yeah.
So
sure.
I think that's what you've done, like with that reading one. If you'd have started where you are now,
no,
you'd have never bothered doing it, and then you'd have put yourself off, which is where people go wrong.
No, of course, but you're 100% right, and that's why they need to be achievable. You've knocked it absolutely on the head. But I suppose what I'm saying is that you need to do it. So when you said there, it's got to fit into your routine. For me, anyway, the point of doing these sorts of things is that they force me to at least a tiny bit change my routine. So, for example, so what you want to aim for, you want to say, this year I read 10 books, right? And I didn't put any effort into it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try and read 15 next year, because I can do exactly what I've done now, but I'm going to have to force myself to find enough time across 365 days to get 5 more books in. And then see how that goes. And then if you do that, then you say, oh, I'm going to do 20 next year or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think it's important that a change has to be a change as well. I suppose that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Where I think that it's a bit of an insult is if, like I say, you say to someone who brushes their teeth 9 times out of 10.
Yeah.
And just misses it every now and again, and you say to them, I'm going to set you a SMART goal.
Yeah.
Let's sit down, write this down. We're both going to sign it. This is the sort of shit that happens clinically.
Yeah.
We're both going to sign it so that you agree to it. And then we'll check up on it again in a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's not expecting anything of somebody. And so maybe it's useful clinically, but it's not useful to yourself. And again, I think that going back to what we were talking about earlier about competition, which I didn't really think about was going to come into this at all, but I think actually is quite important, is that is that you're not in competition with yourself. So again, that number doesn't really mean anything. So if you say I'm going to read 20 books next year and you only read 17, then really that doesn't matter. But the point is that the aim has pushed you to read maybe 2 extra
and it's
books,
probably more than you would have. No, I think it's exactly that. And it does need to be achievable but slightly out of grasp. And I do think it's different for everyone. And that's what I'm trying to say. Like at the beginning, yours is 10. Now, if you read 10, it would be an abject failure on your part, you would feel, I'm sure, because you're reading ridiculously more than that. But you had to start small, and it has to be... That's the whole point of the SMART goal, isn't it? Like, everyone might be capable of doing a certain thing, but you have to do the little steps to get there.
Yeah, totally.
And you can plan as far in the future. I mean, this is where, this is why SMART goals kind of get useful in care planning, is when people want to do massive things, and you break it down into those tiny little bits. So the way I was always taught it is like, oh, this mentally unwell person wants to be an astronaut. Well, let's not kill their dreams right now.
Let's try and get them a job in a charity shop.
Yeah, but then it's like it goes down to the tiny little bits. Like, okay, you want to be an astronaut, you need to go to school. You need to get up in the mornings. Okay, let's start with getting up in the mornings.
Totally, yeah, 100%.
And that sounds really small.
But the thing is, it's very important to say, because I'm not belittling that at all.
Yeah.
For somebody who is acutely psychotic, getting up by 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock so that they eat their breakfast at the time that it's being served is really brilliant. I don't mean to I'm not diminishing that
I know you're not.
at all. I think that's it's absolutely, and only we all know what we're capable of. The problem is that I think you can, and I think I have, and I think a lot of people might be tempted to lie to yourself a little bit. So you say, you're easily going to read 20 books, and you say, oh, just put 20 books on the list so I can cross it off. And that's fine. I think it's good actually to have I'm going back on myself a bit maybe, but it's maybe good to have a few of them on the list, because then they're easy to cross off.
But it has to be a mixture, and I do think it has to be, because, for example, the amount of people, when you do something that seems quite difficult, or you achieve something, and people go, I could never do that. It's like, well, with that attitude, you definitely won't. So if you're deciding you want to do something, it is about exactly what you were saying about getting to the flow state. It has to be something that you can do with effort. And then once you're doing that all the time, and that's becoming easy, it's about remembering, okay, well, I probably need to increase this a little bit, probably do it a bit more. But even if you don't, at least something's become routine that maybe wasn't your routine before. But I do think it's somewhere in that it's about making sure it's all SMART goal, realistic at the very least, and then reviewing it pretty often. Well, which
is where the time orientated things come in. And of course, the beauty of New Year, well, there's two ways of looking at it. I think the beauty of New Year's resolutions with time factors is that generally you're making it for the year. At least I think that's automatically what you're thinking of. So you've automatically got a time period where, and we've started doing this, I think quite well, is at the end of every year you look back on your list and you see what you've done and what you've not done, and then you make a new list maybe based around that, either pushing yourself to go further with the things you've done, or accepting that some of the things you've not done. This hasn't been something I've always been very good at, but I found this quite a healthy thing now, is that just accepting, just saying, well, do you know what, at the start of this year I thought I was going to do this, and it turned out that once I actually maybe... Here's what I'm going to embarrass myself now, probably, and this is the least cool thing I'm ever going to say. But I noticed that on my list, and this was my midpoint list. This was my birthday.
You did one
list,
on your birthday, didn't you?
I did two. One of them was because at the time I just thought I should do this. Was go on the Alpha course. If people don't know what the Alpha course is, it's a sort of introductory to Christianity. And I thought, not because hopefully you've listened to this podcast before, you know where we're at as far as sort of religion goes. But just at that time in my life, I thought, you know what, if I don't explore this thing, then
it'll always be there.
It'll always just be there knocking on my door. Well, I wrote that down on the list, and I was like, I'm just going to force myself to do this. I'm going to force myself to do this. And I did sort of very tentatively start the process. And then whilst doing that and reading about the thing and kind of looking into where it was that I was going to go and do it, and doing the research, basically. You've got to do the research, as the conspiracy theorists tell us. I realised that I absolutely had no interest in that whatsoever, and I definitely shouldn't do that, and I wouldn't get anything out of it whatsoever.
Yeah.
Now, I might be wrong about that, and this might just be me being delusional and thinking that I've worked everything out when actually I should have just gone on the fucking thing and found out.
Who knows?
But I don't think I ever will, because I realised that I was just barking up the wrong tree.
Yeah.
And that was a great process to go through. But fundamentally on my list, when it came to the end of the year, I couldn't tick it off. I couldn't cross it off. I just didn't do it. But I was very appreciative of the fact that I had I'd looked into it, and it driven me to work out something that I needed to work out.
Well, I like that. I mean, I had a similar-ish experience of, looking at the list, and I'd basically half and halved it. Like, I'd mostly done it, but there was quite a lot of stuff I hadn't done. But instead of beating yourself up, it's about looking at it and going, why? And go, actually, I went through the whole year not achieving this goal. Did I try? Or had I actually even forgotten about it? Do I still want to do this goal? Is it important to me? And if it is important to me, like, why didn't I get it? Like, did I need to do a bit more? Do I need to change my routine somehow? It's just kind of just a reassessing of priorities that I think is really healthy. That I don't think we do a lot, because sometimes we just go, I need to do more of this. We don't really make a plan for why. Get to the end of the year and go, I didn't do that. I wish I'd done that. I was like, well, it's not about wishing. It's about figuring out practically, why didn't I do that? There's a reason I didn't do that. Maybe it isn't actually that important to me. Maybe I wrote it down thinking, that'll be a good thing. That should be important to me. If you get to the end of the year and you haven't thought about it,
you
about
were wrong, and that's fine.
It's about accepting that that probably isn't important to you, or if it's because you neglected something, go around. It's a simple thing that a lot of people do is they do this with throwing away clothes. You might make a pile of, if in 3 months I haven't looked at that, it's got to go. And it's the same with like your priorities and your kind of.
I don't think I'd be able to do it. I wouldn't have any clothes left.
No, you wouldn't have any. But it's it's a very simple, like more basic thing that I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that sort of thing. And it's just that same mentality with your goals and priorities. And I think a lot of people feel some sort of external pressure for some of the things they put on there. And this year, I truly have only put, last year I think I did the same, but this year my list is so specific to my own intentions and priorities. And there's no, I think the nice thing about, I think it's a mid-30s thing, or maybe it's just where I'm at, but there comes a time when you just really stop caring about what other people think. And I truly am feeling every version of that at the minute, in a nice way. Obviously, I don't want to hurt people's feelings ever, but when it's about your own self-consciousness and your own, I don't know, the way you live your life. My list, I feel, reflects that this year. And it's just about being on. In that respect, you're honest truly and only with yourself. And I haven't put anything on this year that I don't think I actually want. It makes you reassess your priorities. And I don't feel bad if I don't. Again, there was loads of things I didn't achieve last year on my list. But there was loads of things I did and I'm proud of and I'm happy about. And, build on this year. But all the things I didn't, you just have a frank conversation with yourself about why, and not... I didn't beat myself up once about any of it, which I think in the past I might have. Yeah,
it's reviewing life, isn't it? Which I think is in some respects, going back to something we've talked about a few times, things like gratitude diaries or diaries generally at the end of every day does that as well, but in a much more constant way. And this is quite nice to review your life, I think. One of the other things
just to say, I don't think a lot of people actually do.
No, I never did. Yeah. I never have until the last 5 years, maybe.
Exactly.
Honestly, probably 2 years.
And it feels like some people, I feel like, make their lists and it's not... I think that's where resolutions get a bad name. People just go, it's New Year's, I just made a list of things I'm going to do, and then it's gone, and you don't remember it. Whereas if you give that the effort, it's just a little bit of effort, or you actually want to do it, and you go back to it, it can be, like you say, it's reviewing life. It can be really powerful.
What about short-term ones? So, and I had a few of these, and I think this is quite a standard thing in the sort of modern day, is things like, so for example, going vegan for January is one that I think I don't know if a lot of people are doing it now, but they certainly did for a long time.
Yeah, or giving up alcohol for January.
Giving up January, yeah. Or there's a lot of kind of meditation apps and things like that have like a month's free. In January, where you get a month free, but you also get here's your introduction to whatever it is that we do or whatever. because obviously that's very time orientated.
Yeah.
It's quite quick. It's quite a quick turnaround. But it also, to the and that's the good side of it. And I do think there's quite a lot of other good sides to it, but I will let you answer before I go on about it. But also, I suppose there is a negative side to that, which is kind of like it does also replicate exactly what a lot of people do with their New Year's resolutions. I imagine a lot of people. I don't know really, but I'm sure we've all done at some point where you join the gym, you go to the gym constantly for 2 weeks, then you go half as much on the third week, then you go once on the fourth week, and then you've kind of stopped going. And in a lot of ways, I think that, not drinking for January is great. And I imagine. Does also mean that when January ends, that ends.
Yeah.
What do you think of short-term things like that?
I think I can see the positives and negatives. So the positives come from it proves to you can do something if you really go for it. I think it's a short-term opportunity to try something if it's completely new. And I think a lot of people like it, but this is also a negative, but it's like that no obligation, like there's an end in sight. But
I'm not a vegan, I'm someone doing veganuary.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
So that end in sight is also one of the negatives probably. Like some of these, it's when you do a lifestyle change for a month, because a lifestyle change is hard and it's a lifestyle, like it's your life, like it could be, the intention is for it to be long. So treating it as a month's trial is positive in that it shows you how you can do it, but it's negative in as much as unless you formally, and I don't want to use the word formally, but I think it has to be that important, as it were. You have to kind of dedicate time to reviewing it at the end. And making a commitment therefrom. So it's only a month long because that's the time you've chosen.
Yeah, but
then you've got it's kind of, you've got to have a review at the end and then I think actively decide what the next step is. I speak this just because last year I had one of these goals that fell off the way very quickly because of this. I didn't have the next step in mind properly. I gave up social media in January, and immediately it felt easy to do, and I didn't miss it, and the end of January came and I didn't have a plan, and I just had this loose notion of, I'm just going to log back on, and then from now I'm just not going to use it very often. And when I logged back on, I didn't even miss it. I didn't care for it. I wasn't on it very often for the first few weeks, and then progressively it re-enters life, and it became a problem once again very quickly, and one of which I didn't spend any time amending the entire year.
That's not your fault. It's an addictive substance which has been made to addict you.
True. You don't have to be all stone and focus on me. I will also accept a lot of responsibility for this, but you're very kind in pointing out it's not my fault.
I think we need to start a movement.
But what I should have done, looking back on it, because it's the first, I mean, I don't think I did any, I think I ran every day in January once as well, and that didn't lead to anything, because again, if you call it something for the month, you will do it for the month. Whereas if you say, I'm going to try this for a month and then I'm going to review it and I am going to make a plan for what I then do with it, that's very different. And I don't think that bit is focused on in any way. I think people hope, a lifestyle change for a month will show me I can do it, and then I'm just going to do it. It's like, well, no, you've attached a month to that. So somewhere in your brain, there's a bit of it waiting for the end so it can go back to whatever it was doing before. Whereas if you said, at the end of this month, I'm going to see how I did, and then I am going to make a decision on what I then do, it's very different.
Yeah, totally. Well, we don't want to put any effort. We want everything to be easy, but it's funny to think that even the idea of putting effort into things, i.e. committing for a month of doing thing A, we also want that to be easy. So we don't want to then have to face up to the fact that we, at the end of the time, we've got to then make a decision or do something with it or change our lifestyle.
Or if it was hard, we want relief of not having to do it anymore. And if it was easy, we just think, it was easy, so I could probably just keep doing it. It needs to be, you made a formal decision to start. That end also has to be pretty formal, and you have to decide, like, how am I now going to use this? How am I going to look back at that month, work out what I liked about it, what I didn't, and then what is my decision moving forward? But we're not very decisive generally, I think, as people. Like, especially like we just flow from thing to thing, and that's how time can just disappear. Whereas I think what can be really useful about setting goals, this last year flew by, but in a very productive way. And it was because lifestyle changes happened and felt good and felt, new. So when you do things that are new, it passes time by pretty quick. But also it just felt like it was purely a true life change.
Best year of my life.
Yeah, I think it was mine too. And we didn't even travel once. I would usually have said travelling was part of that.
We didn't really do anything.
We didn't leave the country.
I mean, we did loads, but we didn't do anything that you could say like...
We did lifestyle changes as opposed to life-changing things. But anywho, I just think there is something about that formal... It's the decision to do something in the first place, and then it's... You have to review it. And that sounds so boring to treat your life like this, but I actually think it's one of the most worthwhile. It's definitely what we've done in the last year. Everything good that's happened in the last year in my life has been through actively noticing and reviewing and paying attention to why it was working and building upon it. Whereas just doing something because I'm going to change for January is great to prove you can do it, but you've got to do it with the intention of, in my opinion, I'm sounding preachy now, but like with the intention of taking notice of what happened, reviewing it. And again, like you say, diaries are a really basic and normalized way that quite a lot of people do that in life. But even that, unless you're putting the efforts in, I mean, I journaled on off for the entire of last year, and this year I listened to a few little lessons on journaling with a purpose or journaling for insight and like having something to think about. And already I'm like, oh God, like I enjoyed what I did before, but there's so many ways you can do this. And this way is like just a effortful thing that I wasn't paying proper attention. But it's good because I'm learning and you carry on. So I think it is, you just got to be paying that attention to what we're doing and not just mindlessly meandering like some people may do in a January thing, especially if you know it's ending. Yeah,
it's really interesting. I'd never thought of that, and I think that's definitely true. I think that idea of reviewing it. I mean, my point was going to be different to that, but I think actually you've sort of made an argument for why something might work before I even get to do it. What I was going to say, I've done a number of things which have been that kind of like do them for a month thing. And some of them have been useful, but they've tended to be useful when I've tried to do things that it turns out weren't right. So, for example, last year I decided I was going to start that meditation app that you like, Waking Up, the Sam Harris one. And they do a month free. And I thought, right, I'm going to start from January the 1st. I'm going to do this every day. I did it every day. It turned out just not to be for me. It just wasn't the right type of meditation. It didn't quite work for me. And I wanted something simpler. I wanted something less flashy, honestly, and I wanted something that didn't really involve my phone. So that was useful. But having said that, I suppose it was useful because I reviewed it at the end of it, and I could have, I had the opportunity. Almost easy to review it. You get a free month, and then you have to decide whether you're going to sign up to it.
And you made an active decision. I remember you saying, like, before it ended, you went, "I'm going to finish it, but I know now that I'm not going to continue." But what it did do is it kind of like opened your eyes to the idea of a daily meditation, and you find your own routine from there. Yeah,
although I'd done meditation before, but yeah. But so that I think is, if it's something that you're trying and it may or may not work for you, doing it for a month is good. But then I've definitely done. I remember one year I did a plank challenge. And I had to do every day. You did slightly longer of a plank, up to 5 minutes. So the first one was like 10 seconds, and then I think it might have doubled it every day. I can't remember what it did. But it was set up, and I did it, and I felt really good at the end of it. Even though I was definitely at my not a very fit moment in my life, and it was almost a pointless thing to do. I don't think it necessarily made any difference to me whatsoever. But it was something that I just did a plank every day. Got to my 5 minutes and then was like, fuck yeah, I did 5 minute plank, and then never thought of it again. And never did it again. I don't think I've ever planked since. So, so that in a lot of ways was like, it was not a pointless thing, because I suppose to some extent it showed me that I could do it. Maybe I was sort of proud. I felt good. It was definitely, I felt good crossing it off my list. It was like a positive thing to have done, but it definitely didn't lead to any sort of different lifestyle or anything like that. But what I was going to say was that those things, I think, if we changed, if you could, this attitude of doing it for a month, I think is wrong. And actually, again, I do think you've sort of already argued as to beyond this point. But to me, I was going to argue that if you made it 2 months, then I think, and it will be different for everybody, but my experience, just purely of myself and my own efforts, is that 2 months is about how long it takes to make a genuine change. Because I think that there's something really positive that you can find about doing something for long enough that it really works its way out of your life, and then you're finished with it potentially, or you've changed it. And so going back to your social media example, many years and years ago, and I think I've talked about this on the podcast before, I once put my phone in the cupboard for like 4 days or something. I think it wasn't very long, and at that time I was a real user. I was a real abuser of the telephone, and I just didn't look at it for, I think it was 4 days. It was something like that, 4 or 5 days. And when it came out, I remember thinking, my God, I'm fixed. This is amazing. I've completely fixed myself. But exactly like you, for a while, it was great. And I was able to use it in a perfectly reasonable way. I logged on maybe once a day, had a little peep, and then that was it. But slowly but surely, it worked its way back into my life. And I did it again, and exactly the same thing happened. And it was only once this was at the start of last year, wasn't it? When I deleted everything completely.
Yeah.
I would say it took about 2 months before I think I could have probably, and I didn't, but I could have probably logged back on, and I just wouldn't have used it, and my brain would have been changed. Now, I will say that is an addictive substance, and it probably would have sucked me back in, but just by its own efforts. But definitely, we when we changed our diet, and we sort of talked about this a bit last week, and we're not going to become preachy, and maybe one day we'll talk about exactly what it is we've done, but today is not that day. But when we changed our diet, I would say that, and ultimately it was just cutting out all processed foods, there was different stages that I felt like I went through. The first couple of weeks, I really didn't feel very good. And I think that was I think it was literally my body was expecting all of these weird chemicals that I've been putting in it for a long time.
Pizza Hut twice a week.
And then that passed, and then that sort of got to so in that context, it's kind of like if that was true, if 2 weeks is, I don't think this is quite true, but let's say it was like smoking. I think biologically, it works its way out of your system within 2 weeks, and then beyond that, it's mostly psychological. I don't know if that's true, and I'm no expert. But let's just say it was that. In which case, a month off processed foods would just sort you out, because you'd get to the end of that month and you'd be like, my God, I don't need those things. Those are awful, and you will have got used to your diet. But actually, I don't think a month was long enough. And I think it was about 2 months, maybe even 3, before it just completely normalised and we no longer thought about it. I no longer looked at a chocolate bar and thought, I'd like to have that. Or, nothing bothers me now. Nothing. And I think it's because my mindset has changed from being, I'm missing out on something. So this thing that I've cut out of my life, I'm missing out on that. God, I wish I could have a bag of crisps, or God, I wish I could have whatever. To realising that actually the things that I'm having now are much better than a bag of crisps. My equivalent now is much better, and my lifestyle is much better, and I feel a lot better.
Yeah.
But I think it took longer than a month to get to a point where I could see that, where not just my body had changed, like what my body expected, but also my brain had changed a bit, my lifestyle had changed a bit. I'd worked out all of the positives that were coming from the thing that I was doing. So, for example, if you took veganism as an example, like if you're doing vegan January and then getting to the end of January and being like, thank fuck for that, and having a cheese sandwich, you've not really changed
your lifestyle.
You've not changed your lifestyle in that month. You've just kind of done a month of doing something weird.
Yeah. You haven't applied any kind of thinking to why you're doing it and what it's for. And it's enthusiasm as well.
Maybe you have. Maybe you have. Maybe you have. I imagine most people that do Veganuary do it for a reason. Yeah. They might feel a bit guilty about, something, I don't know.
I think it's also that attitude of like some things they do in January, the public, do in January.
Our public, sure. Like, our public.
It's I'm going to do something that's so hard to give up. If you're going with that attitude, is you're literally just giving something up for a month because it would be so hard to do. I could never give that up for a month. That's what some people say about veganuary. Oh my god, I eat meat every day. I could never give it up for a month. And then
the tough mudder attitude.
But the outcome might be, oh wow, actually it was a lot easier to give up than I can. But if you go into that attitude of, oh, it's going to be so hard to give this up, then, at the end, you're probably gagging to do the thing you just gave up for a month if you feel like you've gone without. Whereas our lifestyle changing, again, we're trying not to talk about it too much, but it was with full enthusiasm and it was kind of all encompassing. So it was about seeing what happened with no real end goal. It was just, what if we completely changed the way we eat? Let's see what changes. And I remember one thing we did is we kept our shopping list for the first 4 or 5 weeks just to see what we were buying as well. We never actually looked back at them, but the idea that we might do kind of kept something. There was like a lot of driving force, and before you knew it, you've got this pile of lists and like, actually we've been doing this for 2 months.
Well, it proves a lot of myths wrong though as well. I recently read Ultra Processed People, which is a very mainstream book, and probably a lot of people know Dr. Van Tulleken.
Yeah, I mean your mum knows. So
Van Tulleken. Yeah, I think he's made tea programs and things, but I don't fuck with that. But he's. You
just mixed two people together, by the way.
Did I?
Chris Van Tulleken.
He's Chris.
And
Tim
Spector is your other mate.
Tim Spector. Oh, right. Okay. There you go. So I don't fuck with remembering people's names either. But he's kind of one of the arguments against this, or one of the reasons why he says, it's completely understandable why everyone's eating all of this processed food and not buying kind of real food, is that it's so much cheaper, right? And sort of brings it into the, not everyone can afford to buy, really good quality food and stuff, which, and to read that, I was 100% on board. I was like, fuck, yeah, no, but I will say this, my experience has not been that at all. And we spend a considerably less money than we did before. Now, that's just my experience, but I suppose but the reason I bring that up, is that if you do this for a month or something and keep your shopping lists, that's how you find out that that's the case.
Yeah.
Now, it might just have been that we were buying expensive things anyway that just happened to be shit for us. I don't know. I don't think we were. We've never really been.
No, but I think we did. I think making one change forced a few other changes, and that's what I mean about this enthusiastic all or nothing experience that I don't think we were wildly conscious of. But I definitely, because it was a change that I hoped to make just before you kind of decided to have this gut health, no processed food attitude. I'd been thinking about weekly shops purely for saving money, because something that a lot of people do is that weekly shop, and you don't feel like you're saving money because you're spending so much once a week, especially like big families. But we were the opposite. We were living, we walked past the supermarket, it's just the two of us, we're in a 1-bed flat, so we were just getting daily shops, having takeaways, and actually we were leaking bits of money, but we were probably spending 20-30 quid every time we went to the shop, every other day.
That's kind of what I mean, yeah.
Whereas now, maybe not because we're buying healthier food, but just because we're doing a dedicated weekly shop. Like, a lot of our routines changed. We changed one thing in our mind, but it's changed an awful lot of our routines.
Yeah.
And because we enthusiastically did all those things, I
entirely agree with you. Sorry.
Yeah.
But I mean, also there's another argument which is about kind of time, how we don't have enough time to always be cooking things. And I get that. But also, I will say, we've saved an awful lot of time by just doing one weekly shop and not going to the fucking shop every day. And farting around. But the point that I'm making isn't, I'm not trying to make some point about how,
no, I know.
Everybody could be eating this way and it doesn't cost you any more money. I just mean that that myth that I had around, if I stop eating processed foods and I start eating real foods, I'm going to need to find all of this extra money.
Yeah.
Or if I do this gut health stuff and I start buying kombucha, which we do now, and it is expensive and more, consider, I mean, I only used to drink water and beer, so I suppose it's cheaper than beer, but it's much more expensive than water. But my point isn't that. My point is that doing it for a month showed me that actually, hang on a minute, we're saving money when I thought we would be spending more money. So it's things like that which are useful, like practical things. By doing something for a short period of time, you can learn about. I suppose that's what I'm trying to say.
As long as you do, again, I think it's about paying attention.
Well, it goes back to exactly. Yeah. You're 100% right. It's not something that I ever thought about. No, you are. Like that idea of if you do anything, then you review it at the end of it, and that's the only thing that's really useful about it.
Yeah.
That almost doesn't matter if you're doing something for a week or if you're doing something for a year.
Yeah.
The review thing is the important thing, and that's I'd never thought of that, but I think that's absolutely true.
Well, that's another, just to go back to more clinical stuff, reflective practice is drummed into us as nurses.
Yeah, but can I just say this? What I always have done with patients or what I used to do with patients in my career is not how I used to treat my own life. And that is true of every single psychiatric nurse, doctor, social worker, and everybody else. Yeah. Is that if you were planning somebody else's life, you would be much better at it than you are at doing your own life.
Yeah, true.
And that's just human nature, I think. I don't know why that is. I have no idea why that is. But it is. Isn't it? It definitely is. So I was very good at telling people about what they could do to improve their lives, and I think probably made a difference to some people's lives. But I was living like... Trash, yeah.
No, but that's what reflective practice isn't about. It is about your own. We're kind of taught a pretend version of mindfulness. Yeah. But normally we're taught it, and it's a drag to do it because it's part of your revalidation or something stupid. Whereas actually, and that's what I mean. Like, it sounds all too formal to be like at the end of January you need to sit and review it. It sounds like an appraisal, but it is, and I think that's a useful thing. You have to kind of go into it with a useful attitude, and I truly do, and I think it does come from just generally doing things that are more mindful, expansive, and paying attention, and it's about doing that in all sorts of ways. Like, you can do a daily meditation for 10 minutes, or you can give up something for January, and at the end of January really have a think about what you did and what you got out of it, and then make another plan. Because that's the other thing. It's about make a plan and then make another plan. It's not just... Yeah, that's why I think a January plan or a New Year's resolution, sometimes it is that time qualification, like you say, that can be its negative. But I think you just got to know that and kind of effortfully think about it at the end with dedication.
I think to argue slightly against that and everything that we've said, pretty much.
Oh, brilliant!
There is one other maybe I think is probably true, is that making any change, particularly as you get older, is good no matter what, even if it doesn't really last that long, True. Or even if you don't get anything out of it. I do think that the worst thing for us as a species is just giving up and kind of, and I think that comes quite naturally as you get older.
Yeah.
And I think I've seen that in my own life, but I've certainly seen it in my parents' life and people's parents' lives and people who are older than me's life. Like, that's the worst thing that you can do, is to start a year and not really even feel obliged to that you want to be anywhere different by the end of the year.
Yeah. Because
I think even if it's in tiny ways, or even if you fail a lot, just having a go at some change is good, is healthy.
Yeah.
And it's probably good for your brain, and it will probably maintain a sort of insight into life.
Yeah.
Which will continue, and therefore you might get to a point later on where you can really make a change.
Yeah.
I've definitely seen that in my own life. I've had different times where I've kind of given up, and not given up, but just not really given a shit. And then other times where I've really tried but have failed miserably. But they were all kind of steps towards getting to the point maybe that I'm at now, where I feel like I can. I made this list this year, confident in the fact that by this time next year, I was going to be different, changed, and that's definitely what happened this year. And because it's happened, I now feel really confident that it will happen again. And I think I had to take those steps before, and I couldn't just do that. I couldn't. When we met 11 years ago, and you told me to make a list, I definitely didn't think to myself, in 11 years' time, I'm going to have the best of my life. You know what I mean? That was not on the cards.
No, true. And I think it's also about, one of your most powerful changes and lists came in May. So I think it's also, if you're not feeling it now, it's maybe like, it's about, it's just having that dedication whenever you want to have it. Whenever the moment strikes you. Again, one of the most powerful things I read in the last 2 or 3 years is literally the sentence, start where you are. I mean, it's the name of a book as well. It's a beautiful book, but start where you are is just so powerful in my kind of opinion, because it's exactly that. Like, at any point you could make any decision to make a change, and it can be teeny tiny, it could be massive, but there's no pressure to make it massive. It's just there's also no reason for you not to do anything at any moment you choose to, if you want to. Okay, there'll be a lot of argument against that, time pressures or money or
no,
I don't know.
No.
But I think
arguments.
attitude-wise
No,
and your
totally,
dedications to something are available to you at all times, and all of those other things are just the excuses for not doing it. But start where you are is by far and away the most powerful sentence I've heard in years. I'm sure other people are just listening to that going, why? But if it resonates with you, then you get it, and if it doesn't, then that's fine. But I just think the only thing you actually have at any moment is the right now moment, and there's no reason why at this point you couldn't change your brain or think anything.
That is how we're going to leave it.
Ooh.
You don't need Manowar lyrics this time. You've got Siobhan.
And we also have,
Start
I don't know
where
if
you
anyone
are.
heard, but Naughty Terry, the little neighbourhood Jack Russell, is shouting at people on the street. I think he's shouting the poo-poo man away.
There's a
So
little
stop
there's
sucking
a
poos.
little dog who we have named Naughty Terry, who just barks constantly when he's out, and he's so happy. He's just barking away.
Yeah.
Doesn't like anybody, but he loves his time out. And
loves
he's
it.
barking away. I hope his New Year's resolution is to continue barking past our
Yeah.
house 3 times a day, every day.
I hope
because
you never change, Naughty Terry.
I love it. We will see you in 2 weeks' time. We're back on it. Siobhan's off social media, so if you're listening to this, you probably subscribed to us already, but we aren't even posting anything on there anymore. So
No.
if you'd like to help us out, you could post this, and you use social media, but I don't want to encourage you to, but you could very welcome to post this if you'd like, or just tell your friends about it, write someone a letter, do whatever you want, talk to your
Send
mates.
us an email.
Send us an email. Did I say shamcityroast@gmail.com?
I can't remember, but say
I
it
think I
again.
did. And but we'll be back. We're just going to keep making these things, throwing them out in the ether, and see who fucking finds them.
Exactly.
And thank you very much if you have found it, and we will see you soon.
Ciao.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.